All right, welcome to another edition of Chronic's Cocktail Hour. It is a very special Hoosier Hysteria Tailgate podcast edition. We're joined by an esteemed panel of guests today. Starting on your left, we've got the new columnist for the Indiana Daily Student, Greg Gottfried. We have friend of the show, Alex McCarthy from Inside Indiana. Also a longtime friend of the show, Alex Bozich, founder and editor of Inside the Hall. How are you guys doing today?
Excellent. Yeah. Always good to be here with you, Connor.
Man, always good to be here. Yeah. Honestly, driving over, is there a better time to be in Indiana than right now, though? Leaves are turning. Nice warm afternoon. Sun feels good on your back.
IU football lost.
Yeah. IU football is back to form.
Right, everything is just kind of...
The universe has found order again.
Yeah.
Well, before we go on, as always, I'm your host, Chronic Hoosier. Allow me to introduce myself. And that is a pint glass, by the way. It looks a little bit weird because it's oddly shaped. Get this basketball season started, guys.
For the kids.
FTK, for the kids. All right, Hoosier Hysteria. First public event of the year. Got a lot of new pieces on the team this year. We obviously with the loss of Yogi and Troy and Nick and Max, we got a lot of question marks heading into this season. Got a lot of new pieces involved. One thing that kind of struck me about this year, or at least this off season, it was kind of an uneventful off season by IU basketball standards. I mean, we didn't have any negative press got generated. Had a couple guys late to arrive this year. Freddie McSwain and Deron Davis took a little bit longer than the rest of the guys to get on campus. But otherwise, it seemed like exactly what you would want from an off season. With the only exception being, we've got about a third, of our scholarship players coming off of surgery.
Yeah, everybody's hurt.
Everybody is hurt. A lot of key pieces are hurt or have previously been hurt. What storylines are you guys looking at going into the season? Well, go ahead and start with you.
Sure. One of the obvious ones, I mean, like you said, a lot of the guys are not 100%. And Tom Crean was, when we first talked to him a couple weeks ago, first availability in the fall, he was saying that they hadn't even done like 5-on-5 stuff all summer, anything since North Carolina, just because they didn't have 10 healthy bodies to do that. So I'm kind of curious to see what the chemistry is there. But I mean, Colin Hartman obviously is a big storyline because I think a lot of people expected a lot out of him, from a basketball sense and from a leadership sense and everything like that. And we don't really know the extent of his knee injury, when he'll be back, and anything like that. So that's certainly one of the things that I'm keeping an eye on.
Speaking of Colin's knee injury, do you guys find it odd that he's not there, that he refuses to identify exactly what the injury was?
If you remember back to last year with Blackman, I don't think we actually learned what the actual injury was until the NCAA tournament when we talked to him.
Yeah.
This is a little different in the standpoint of they actually made Colin available last week. He knew he was going to be asked the question. Everyone asked it. He didn't want to answer it. So I don't know if that's his decision or a program decision.
You do have HIPAA concerns involved, right. Personal health privacy rights. So,
but I don't necessarily understand what the motivation would be behind concealing whether or not if it's an ACL or a meniscus. But he definitely left open the possibility, unless he was just flat out lying to us, that he could play this year, which tells me it may not be an ACL injury, because unless my math's wrong, I've never seen anybody come back in less than 5 or 6 months from a torn ACL. So.
Mm-hmm. No, and one of the reasons I found it kind of weird was this year when Freddie had his whatever the procedure was. They were really forthright and open about it as soon as it happened, that he had undergone a procedure to clear up what I think they identified as a pre-existing injury. And then they kind of said it was nothing too major, but I just found it an odd contrast between the two situations. And perhaps it is just the player's perspective or prerogative, whether or not they want to introduce that. Greg, what are you looking for going into the year, man?
Well, even with Hartman being out, it seems like he's one of the more important pieces for IU. We talked, us journalists, talked to some of the other players, Grant Galon in particular, talked about how important Hartman was and him getting used to IU and him just becoming a member of the Hoosiers. Tim Priller also talked about the same type of thing, about just seeing Hartman take charge as a coach on the court. even though he can't be on the court. So that's something that's important to me. And then the point guard issue. I mean, who's going to play point guard, especially at the end of the game? Right now, it looks like it's going to be Newkirk, but it could be Robert Johnson. Blackman's going to play guard, so maybe yell at the ball at the end of the game. It's up in the air right now.
Probably not going to be Juwan Morgan this year, hopefully.
Probably not. They're not going to be touting the backup point guard, Juwan Morgan, in the season this year.
I really want to see if OG, and not as a shot at OG, because he has not been the one that has created any of this hype. It's been us and others in the national media. I want to see if he's able to live up to some of this, the expectations that he's been getting in the preseason, because it's one thing to go from a guy who completely off the radar, who comes on the court as the fourth or fifth option, nobody's really expecting him to do much, to this year where he's not going to have Yogi, he's not going to have Troy to take attention away from him. Other teams are going to be game planning for him now. He's going to have to make some adjustments, and as much as he doesn't want to talk about the NBA factor, I mean, it's being written about it. He could be a potential lottery pick. It's got to be in the back of his mind. There's going to be a different pressure on him this year, so I just want to see how he responds and how much better he's actually going to be.
Because correct me if I'm wrong, not even Victor drew this much hype going into his junior season.
No, because Victor, it took halfway through the season. A lot of people talked about him. He had that really good game against Kentucky. He had some really good games his sophomore year, but it really took halfway through his junior year where we were talking about him as an All-American and a guy that could really go high in the draft. His stock continued to soar after his junior year even ended, and I think when he got into the NBA workouts and people had a chance to look at it even closer. OG, it's really just based off a couple of really good games and potential. I mean, he obviously made a big impact in that Kentucky game, blocking Jamal Murray's shot twice and the things he was able to do with his athleticism, but we've never seen him play 30 minutes a game in the Big Ten to see if he's going to be a guy that can consistently knock down three-pointers. Is he going to be a better? His free throw shooting last year was really poor. He's have something he's going to have to improve upon. We know he's going to be really good defensively, but it's going to be a different mindset for him, like it or not, this year, being, I hate to use the cliche, the hunted rather than the hunter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're going to have to lean on him so much more. And like you said, I don't even know if he can live up to the expectations that people have put on him. Because, I mean,
it's a lottery pick.
It's insane. Yeah, like people have ranked him as like the top, NBA prospect in the conference. And
so, if he doesn't have a great year and he doesn't go pro after this year,
it's going to look like a bust.
People are going to say he was a disappointment, but really, this is a guy that came in ranked 280. It's crazy how in a year kind of the whole story of OG has changed.
Right, and like you said, almost in like the span of a few weeks.
Right.
Really, I mean, because he was kind of a pleasant surprise to a lot of people, especially after Blackman got hurt and there were just kind of more minutes available for him and Morgan. He was just kind of that guy hit a corner three, or he made a nice defensive play. It was a little bit of a nice surprise, and then the tournament role, the Big Ten and NCAA tournament. He had a good game against Michigan. He had that like 360 dunk against Chattanooga, and that great game against Kentucky. I mean, it just took so little time for him to go from like pretty good, pretty reliable to like, holy crap, this guy is definitely gone after his sophomore year. I mean, that's what a lot of people are thinking. They're like, oh, Bryant's going to be gone, OG's going to be gone, Blackman maybe. It's like,
for the record, I was batshit crazy about him. Like as soon as I saw the short shorts.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I was leading that train.
They're even shorter this year. I don't know if you see the practice.
I did. I did. And let me tell you this too. When he's away from the gym, I think they get shorter. I swear to God, he wears shorter shorts off the floor than he does on the court.
I have the same type of shorts. I wear the Hyper, and it looks really good.
I could go the rest of my life without verification of that information.
Just you'll see the pictures. They're out there.
Reminder not to follow Greg's Instagram.
So that's going to be your like headshot in the IDS, like in the column. It's just your
instead of a headshot, it's really a crotch shot.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a power move.
We're always looking for new ways to attract the IDS readers. Exactly. That's that right there.
It's a power move.
Yeah.
So speaking of the expectation, this is kind of unique this year in as much as both Bryant and OG have projected to go pro this year. I can't remember what the source was. Perhaps it was an interview he gave back in Fort Wayne or Muncie. In the offseason, Blackman was talking with a some media, and he had indicated that but for the injury, it was absolutely his intention to declare after last season as well. So I would assume it's safe to believe that that's probably his goal again this year. He says he's back to 110 or 200% or something greater than whole. So obviously that's probably very much in the forefront of his mind too. Correct me if I'm wrong, this is the first time Tom's ever had that, or Coach Green's ever had that issue going into a season where he's possibly losing 3 players to early attrition, which presents a lot of challenges, I guess, and opportunities. I mean, you inherently have NBA or potentially NBA level talent. At the end of the day, though, too, you have 3 guys. I don't know that any of them explicitly stated it beyond Blackman, but I would assume OG and Brian are very much going to be trying to build their pro portfolio. So that could pose some interesting issues as far as roster chemistry, making sure that they're playing for the team rather than for the stat sheet. I don't necessarily, and I'm not trying to imply that I foresee that being a problem. It's just a new issue Crean's never had before. And it also poses another issue in as much as, how do you recruit for that? Right. I mean, we've got, we're already oversigned, correct me if I'm wrong, we're currently oversigned by 2 this year? Or for next year?
I think so.
Here, I have the Inside the Hall scholarship page pulled up on my computer right now.
One, because maybe
Smith
2.
and Moore? So right now we've got 3 players in the class, Durham, Smith, and Moore. We've only got 1 scholarship available as things currently stand right now.
That's assuming OG, Brian, and Blackman are on this.
And then there's Hartman as a wild card in that, whether or not he can play this year or if he would try to pursue a 5th year if he gets a red shirt. So it's kind of bonkers as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, that's a tough spot there.
Speaking of recruiting, Hoosier Hysteria has long been used as a tool to help introduce some of our recruits to the IU faithful. Fill me in. Who we got here tonight? I know we got Billy Preston in. He's on an official visit right now. Chris Wilkes could not make it. Is his family, or are they not going to be here today? His dad and his brother?
The word on the street is, yeah.
His dad and his brother, yeah.
His dad and his brother going to be here? What else should IU fans be on the lookout for in the stands?
A lot of younger.
Yeah, there aren't that many like
2019, 2020 kids.
Yeah, so it's not like because you have Preston, the 2017 class, but it's not like there's really
It's not like the Gary Harris year, whenever the whole movement was here.
Yeah, exactly.
Gary Harris and everything.
So it's not quite the same kind of hoopla about it, because there's really not that much of an immediate attention with a lot of these guys who are here this year. And then Preston's a little bit of a wild card. We don't really know that much about him. So it's not really it's not really the recruiting event that's been in the past couple of years, just because it's a lot of guys down the road. So,
if you had to guess, where do you think this class stands, or where do you think this class finishes? How many does he end up adding?
Maybe just 1 more.
One or maybe 2, depending on who leaves. I mean, if Preston or Wilkes tell him they want to come, he's going to sign them.
That was another thing that stood out this year in the offseason. We didn't have any attrition. There was 0 roster attrition other than natural graduation.
And it's funny, there was like 800 transfers elsewhere, but I didn't really read any articles about some of the programs running guys off. So
It could or could not be a result of the Student Athlete Bill of Rights as well.
Yeah, potentially.
Who knows? It certainly introduced a whole other element to the way that the roster is being managed right now.
Yeah.
So let's look in the present. Let's look at the now. Obviously, this is our first look at what the squad's going to be. One of the things that's been said a bunch is we're kind of moving towards this positionless basketball at IU, which we've got a lot of wings, we've got a lot of athleticism, a lot of length on this team. And even if you're not assigning positions, guys still have to play roles on a team. Let's start with, what do you guys project being the starting lineup? What's the rotation? Who fills what roles on this kind of amorphous roster that we have where nobody has assigned positions?
Right, well, that's kind of the weird thing, is that, we were talking about point guards earlier and who's going to bring the ball up and everything like that. They might not have a point guard. I mean, it could just be, Tom Crean said in an interview this summer that they thought about going like point guard by committee, that whole thing. So I still expect.
Let me ask you this though.
Yeah.
There's a football ad, as it says, if you have more than one QB, you don't have one.
Right, and
does that hold true for point guards?
I guess we'll find out. And I think that's what a lot of people kind of responded initially to Crean saying that. Was like what the heck? So does that mean now he doesn't have a point? Like no one can bring the ball up?
I think it is something that they're going to have to build throughout the season too. It's just you have to see who's playing well and where they're going with that. I mean, the three players who are essentially guaranteed a starting spot would be Bryant, Blackman, and OG. And other than that, it's just kind of up in the air. It's a matchup game. I mean, depending on what Big Ten team they're playing or who they're against. But I think as the season goes on, and if Newkirk can step into the role, I think he's going to be the point guard for IU. But other than that, it could be Robert Johnson, it could be anyone. Yeah,
I would say Robert Johnson's probably guaranteed a starting spot.
Yeah,
considering he started
the season off.
Yeah, he started his first 2 years. I mean, I could definitely see starting line to start the year being Newkirk, Blackman, Johnson, 3 guard, have the set with OG and Bryant together. I could also see just going, if you don't think Newkirk's ready to kind of take the reins, so to speak, Blackman and Johnson, and maybe Morgan, Anunoby, and Bryant, because I think you have enough in terms of ball handling, having OG and Morgan out there to where you wouldn't really feel like you have 2 big guys. So there's a lot of different ways it could go. I mean, the first game against Kansas is going to be not really a game that you're going to want to experiment too much. So you better have a pretty good idea of what you're going to do. It's not like it's going to be Mississippi Valley State. We're talking about a team that's going to be probably second or third. I think they're second in the coaches poll. They'll probably be second or third in the AP poll. So a team that a lot of people are talking about is the potential Final Four championship contender. So.
AP in the coaches poll currently have a number 1.
The what?
Kansas?
Yeah, Duke. Coaches.
AP's not out yet. Coaches just came out. I think Kansas was 2.
So they were mad that
2 or 3.
It's a hell of a start. It's going to put a premium on those exhibition games this year to figure out exactly what that rotation looks like and where you go with it.
Because I tend to think that like Johnson might start out as a point guard just because he's played a couple years in the system. But I think they want Newkirk to eventually be the guy and have Johnson and Blackman playing off the ball.
It's interesting to see who they'll end the games with, because that's. I mean, as important as starting the point guard, I mean, it's who has the ball at the end of the games, because that was Yogi's.
That's how OG got introduced pretty much. He may not have started a lot of games, but he found his way into the finishing rotation.
So it'll be interesting, even in the opening exhibition games and that Kansas game, who will have the ball in the last 2 minutes. I think that will kind of set the tone for the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tom Crean has said that for years about like, you guys worry too much about who's starting and whatnot. It's all about who's the 5 on the floor. We'll see.
Absolutely. So speaking of that schedule, it is going to be notable in as much as we're starting with probably the toughest test of the season, the very first game. Not only do you not know yourself, you really don't have any opportunity to scout the opposing team, aside from maybe watching their exhibition tape. It's a Hawaii game, which for those of us who remember last year's trip to Hawaii didn't go so well. What was up with the start last year? Because for a team that had a lot of expectations to start the season, between Hawaii, the trip to Duke, it was really disappointing. And as we were talking before we started this, and then they totally kind of became who we all thought they were going to be after that. Do you think that's something that's in play this year? What do you make about this schedule and the way that it shapes up? Because we got a lot of stiff tests. The only one of which at home is going to be is versus North Carolina. Although we do get a lot in Indianapolis, which is going to be a pretty friendly environment.
Yeah, I mean, what Tom Crean said last year was that Thomas Bryant wasn't totally healthy, and it was also a 18-year-old who was asked to do a lot in terms of defending that back line and doing a lot defensively, because I think that's obviously where the problem was on the defensive end. But it just, I don't know, I guess they just didn't really gel that much. I mean, Robert Johnson was really the only guy who was really consistently good defensively for the first couple months of the season, and then things started to come together. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Tom Crean said a lot of it was on Bryant, that he was hurt a little bit, after the first couple practices. So I think that was a big part of it. But
leaving the front door open too on the perimeter didn't help a lot.
Right. Yeah.
This goes through the Bryant point, but it seemed like they couldn't get the ball inside at all. I mean, that was a problem. They were just chucking up threes, especially at Maui at the beginning of the season, and then I mean, they still chucked up threes near the end of the season, but at least they were getting the ball inside a little and just spreading everything. That's what they had to do.
So looking ahead, last year's team, by the time all the dust settled, ended up having led the nation in effective field goal percentage. 6th most efficient offense in the country. Was able to get the stuff together defensively, ended up finishing 59th. Obviously, everything at this point is speculative. What would you project, though, their identity becomes? What kind of team do we see this year? Are they going to be as efficient as shooters? Is it going to be more of a post-driven team? What kind of contours do you project?
I think it'd be like
Dr. Claudio. Hi.
I think it can be kind of both because, when we think about especially effective field goal percentage that takes into account, the three-point shot, we kind of tend to think more about their outside shooting, but Thomas Bryant led the conference in field goal percentage, and I think they're going to play through him a ton. They're going to play through him, and they're probably going to play through Anunoby a little bit more. So I think it can kind of be both. I mean, it could be a little bit of a post-driven team, but I think that'll open up things even more on the perimeter. And that's what Crean said for years too, is that they're so much more efficient when they are able to, like you said, get it inside a little bit and then work it kind of out of the post.
Dunks are pretty damn efficient, I found.
That's true.
High efficiency on a slam dunk.
3 feet or, yeah.
It's a good shot. They should take a lot of those.
They should.
I mean, the offense is going to have to take a step back, I think, somewhat.
We're number one. They can't go ahead.
Exactly. It's got to be, it could be a top 15 offense, which is still pretty darn good. But if it's going to take that much of a dip, to kind of balance things out, I think the defense is going to have to take a step forward.
With the depth this team has, do you think they'll be better defensively?
I would think they're on the perimeter, especially. There may be a little bit more depth to motivate a guy like James Blackman Jr. to say, we've got a couple of freshman guards that want your minutes. If you're not going to defend, there's a chance they're going to take some of them. In the post, I mean, you've got Deron Davis, who comes in as a kind of a really good shot blocker and rebounder. You've got Juwan and OG and Bryant. So you should have a pretty balanced lineup at all times as far as not having one particular weak spot.
Yeah,
so I don't know. I mean, I'm not expecting this team to be a top 15 or top 20 defensive team by any stretch, but if they could be something like 30 to 40 range, I mean, that would be another step forward and probably right in line with where they should be based on the personnel.
As important as the offense has been under Tom Green, the reason they beat Kentucky last year was because of the defense. I mean, Thomas Bryant improved over the season, and from what we've heard, he's increased his vertical by 13 inches.
How is that humanly possible?
I can't even get my vertical to 5 inches. I don't know how he's doing that.
Yeah.
But
I don't know that my vert is 13, period. Not to mention could be increased by 13.
I think some of those numbers are maybe not completely accurate.
I'll believe that as soon as you can convince me that they fudge attendance numbers.
Yeah.
You're going to have to prove it to me.
Right.
No comment.
I'll try to, yeah. But I mean, even like OG, we were talking to him the other day, and someone, because the roster lists him as 15 or 20 pounds heavier than he was last year, and someone said how much have you gained? He said maybe 5 pounds or something. We were like, well, that's not what it says on the roster. And he said, oh no, that's a lie. He was very straightforward. OG doesn't really
talk. The tournament that he weighed 240 pounds and he was listed all season at 225.
Yeah.
So I don't think his weight was ever right in the first place.
Yeah. But
a lot of the numbers are used to play. Maybe he had a bad day. Maybe on his worst day he had a bad jump and then he actually came back the next day. You never know. Yeah, 13 inches seems pretty interesting.
I can't imagine a college team playing games with the numbers like that. I would be pretty shocked if that were true. But leaving that. Where do you think this team finishes? I hate these questions. I hate them when I get asked, but I'm asking you.
Like in the Big Ten, or?
Let's do Big Ten place and overall season total record. What's this season hold?
I'd say second in the Big Ten, I think. With Michigan State losing Gavin Schilling, I can't necessarily see Michigan State as a better team right now than Indiana. As far as
I'm the president of Fox Sports.
regular season record, they play 31 games. I'd say something like 24-7.
Yeah, either 2 or 3. Like there's so many question marks with Michigan State. The new guys coming. I mean, a really good signing class coming in, but who knows how it? And who knows how it gels and everything like that. Wisconsin obviously should be really good. So yeah, I mean, second or third in the Big Ten, and probably around 25 wins ish. Maybe 23 or 24 wins. So I'll say second in the Big Ten, 23 wins.
I would say third in the Big Ten. I see them getting off to a slow start, especially with the Kansas and North Carolina early on. I think they get 22, 23 wins, but they're going to be right there at the end of the season.
Let me back this train up real quick, too. Looking at the non-conference. North Carolina, Kansas, Butler, Louisville. How do you think they come out of that stretch?
I'd say 2-2.
Yeah.
500 sounds about right.
Yeah.
Which ones do you think they drop?
I think they'll lose to Kansas and Louisville. Beat North Carolina at home, beat Butler and Indy. That'd be my projection as of now.
Yeah, projection-wise, I think so. We'll see where North Carolina's at. They lost Theo Pinson, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they might beat North Carolina here. And,
I think the Butler is the only one that you look at and say they should definitely win that
right.
game. The other 3 teams have a chance to be ranked top 12, 15 all year. I mean, Kansas should be top 5 all year. I'd say Carolina top 10. Louisville has more questions, but
For the record, too, we're going to be crowdsourcing chants and signage for the Louisville game that I am absolutely positive are going to be heard and felt
it's going to get ugly.
on the Louisville bench.
Yeah.
I'm so looking forward to that. That's a jerk. Hello! All right.
What's up, man?
I'm going to go on record and say undefeated national champions. We're going to repeat the 76 greatness. That's what this day is all about. That's my favorite part of Hysteria. It's kind of like opening day in baseball. Everything is new. Nothing but hope on the horizon. In the event they fall short of that, I do feel like we've got a team, and a lot of it I think I'm going to hedge on the ball handle and their ability to get the ball up court, their ability to feed the post, and to keep everybody else on the floor engaged in the offense. That's my big question mark that I'm looking to see answered here tonight in the exhibitions of Kansas and whatnot. But assuming that they can keep the ball moving, they certainly seem to have perhaps more, if not better, pieces from end to end of the bench to maybe make a run in March. Perhaps this is the year that he actually gets a win in the second weekend and can go a little bit beyond that. So I'm still going to say undefeated national champs with a fallback position being let's at least get past the Sweet 16. So I'm going to leave it at that. I appreciate you guys for joining us. As always, it looks like the line behind us is starting to move. I know you guys have snazzy new media seats to go attend to. Alex has got the main media table. You guys, you get my season ticket view from when I first bought in.
Yeah,
You're way up in the rafters.
Alex Overflow McCarthy.
But you get the flat screens now. You guys get to watch the game on flat screens. This was before I had BTN streaming, so I couldn't even do that on my phone back then.
True.
We just had to stare at the bottom of a whiskey flask and ask people down a couple rows in front of us what the scoreboard said. Which I'm interested to see too, like where do they place that big screen?
Right.
you can see it right there the first 2
Well, I don't know that they've had it at game height.
Yeah, that's the.
I think they maybe had it lower for picture purposes. I'm real curious to see where its regulation game height is, because that's going to determine how much of it you guys get to see.
Right. I think the first row of media seating should be okay, but I don't know as it gets further back.
I'm sure people will be tweeting about it. So
I'm sure you'll all know.
If there's one thing the media does spectacularly, it's bitch about their placement at sporting events. So
Right.
I trust you guys will hold up your
All right, we
bargain.
bitch about the free seating, the free food, the free Wi-Fi. Yeah, it's all unfair.
What about the food tonight so far? Quick
Great
review.
so far.
1 for 1.
Great
Yeah.
so far. Yes.
Let the record state too, this is the first podcast that guests have come bearing gifts. Read Greg Gottfried. All right, looking forward to it, guys. We'll catch you on the flip side. As always, we'll see you later.